I'll put in a little bit about the NHS as well, because before I was renting a house in a different place, and my GP always provided interpreters, and it was really good. And I really wanted to keep the GP, but they said, oh no, we have to move because obviously we're in the local area. So I accepted that, and we tried to find, GPs that were near me. And I registered and I said, can you provide interpreters? And they said, oh no, please can you find a different place? And I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was a little bit rude to me, to be honest, because it's NHS linked, and obviously they're doctors, they're GPs. And to have to sort of put up with travelling a little bit further to get my GP, who was really good at providing interpreters. They provide them face to face, so it's not all GPs have that sort of like good experience or good knowledge about providing interpreters.
So why do you feel they asked you to choose somebody else?
I said to them, would you regularly provide an interpreter for me? Me and all of my family are deaf, and they said, oh no, we won't. And they just said it was better for me to find somewhere else.
Sorry, you had to find another GP. Oh, sorry. I thought they were suggesting you choose a different interpreter. Oh,
because they didn't want to provide me a BSL interpreter. They said that they won't, and that really shocked me. So that's why I've sort of kept at the same place for years and years and years, but obviously travel a little bit further. But they always provide us with interpreters.
Yeah, I'd love to know where that is. if you ever encounter anything like that again, that is what an MP is there to challenge. And I'd be very, I'm shocked to hear that and appalled, to be honest with you. But that's what an MP is there to challenge.
That was about 3 years ago.
Okay. So. Well, if you ever encounter anything like that again, I hope you get in touch.
That's great, thank you. And I've grown up my whole life, and I always rely on my mum. I sort of use her, like an interpreter from my doctor from the age of, right up to sort of 13, 14. But obviously then you start to realise I don't really want to rely on my mum to do that. And obviously she's not a qualified interpreter, she just sort of signs basically for me. And I feel bad for relying on family members as well. I want to be independent and to try and learn how to independently contact GPs, book interpreters and things like that. But so when I was just over 20 and I moved here to Peterborough, and I was trying to be independent. I'd asked the doctor myself, if they could book an interpreter, and they just looked really shocked, and they don't really know what that is if we ask them to book an interpreter because of our deafness. My English is not very good for me, so we can't sort of rely on having notes back and forth, and I can communicate really fluently through an interpreter. But the doctor sort of says, well, how do I find an interpreter? And I say, oh, I don't really know, you have to do it online. But I sort of said to them, could you book one as soon as possible? And they say, oh yeah, I'll try my best. But I think it was a week or two later, I then came back to the doctors to try and book an appointment, and I was waiting so long. And I said to the doctor, have you booked an interpreter? And they said, oh no, sorry, I forgot. And I just felt like, I really disagree with that sort of attitude, to forget to book an interpreter, and they hadn't done it before, especially when I'd asked for it and made it clear that it was a need for me. That really made me frustrated and upset, and I felt like it was a waste of my time, to be honest. I felt like, they're just not bothered and they were trying to avoid it.
Well, I would, sorry.
I think that's just really difficult. That's the difficulty for me.
I would suggest that GPs and other support services within the NHS are probably well used to bringing interpreters for those who have English as an additional language or can't speak any English. And I think anyone who would want to use NHS services who didn't have English as their main language would be appalled to hear to have a similar experience to yours. And I think I don't know, Andy. Is this a regular thing for BSL that you're hearing? Because I think if it happened with those who couldn't speak English, that would be a bigger scandal. And similarly, BSL. Yeah. Okay.
I think probably my best recommendation would be like fire stations, police stations, things like this. Important places. If people were just trained, if the staff were trained about deaf awareness, so knowing that you have to provide an interpreter and things like this, then it'd be much easier for the deaf community, and then the staff would say, oh okay, this person's deaf, I know the process, not for me to have to fight my way through it,
Yeah.
And I think you know, it's just like a little bit of equality, really. I mean, hearing people arrive and they have a really smooth experience with these different services. They don't have to keep, you know, pestering them about booking an interpreter or this, that and the other. They chat and they have whatever they need sorted, and it's a much quicker situation as well. So, for example, you know, a lot of my friends can hear, or they'll go with, you know, hearing families if they're deaf. But they can see that the hearing people have much smoother experience, and deaf people, you know, maybe their appointments are later or there's never an interpreter, and they just get all these delays when hearing people can just get on and do it. So really, I think that's where the difference is.
Do you think there is something I can do, perhaps, to write to GP surgeries in Peterborough, you know, in a very positive way, but just saying that I came here today, just saying, giving them a gentle reminder that they have a legal duty to provide this service, and they should see it as a similar sort of service to any other language barrier. I mean, would that be helpful?
Yeah, no, I really agree. That'd be great. And especially important places like Vlad was saying, you know, about doctors, surgeries and police, it's just a little bit of deaf awareness so that they know when a deaf person arrives. They say, oh yeah, that's what we have to do, we have to book an interpreter. That's really important. I totally agree with that, 100%. Yeah, that's right. And obviously, remember here in the UK, they've recognised BSL as a language.
Yes, of course.
So it means...
Same thing would apply.
It's official, it's approved, but what was that for if we don't have accessibility? You know, that's the point, is to try and get interpreters, and with the NHS and GP they have funding for the interpreters for deaf people, but I think they're just trying to sort of push it aside, but it is their responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they try to avoid it, and they don't want to pay, and they just sort of try and say the deaf people don't need it, or you know, we haven't had access for such a long time, and like Vlad said, all the hearing people sort of smooth and they don't worry about it. But I don't think they understand how it feels, you know, for the difficulties. They don't, or they'll say, oh, you know, we feel sorry that you're deaf. I don't want that.
Okay. Well, I think that'll be a good positive thing for me to do as a result of this meeting. I think, and I'd be very happy to do that. And write to let's start with GP surgeries, doctor surgeries, and see what sort of response we get. But, you know, we'll do it in a very, very positive way. But I'll say, look, it is a result of hearing the experiences of you three here today.
And we stay in contact with Andy to let him, so you know, so we can sort of find out some more information. Is that possible? So he can feed back some more.
Well, I'm hoping Andy's going to help me write the letter, and you know, from there I'll obviously send Andy through any responses I get, and he can share it with you all.
I'm really, really hopeful that, you know, that'll be a really good process. I think hopefully that goes ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
There's just one problem with GPs. I think some GPs, you know, are really good, and then others they'll sort of, or they'll say, you know, we'll go and find a different one. But I think all GPs having the knowledge about deaf people would be brilliant. I think there's a lot of barriers there. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be as in anything in life, there'll be a variability in terms of their proficiency in this duty that they have. But it's important that people such as myself are able to talk about your experiences accessing NHS services in a bid to try and improve accessibility, and that's what I'm here to do. And I think obviously here in Peterborough, you know, it's not just us three. I think there's a lot of deaf people that live in, I think over 100